Like, how about it? How do you practice the vision? Like,
Yeah.
I love the thought. That's so right. Like, how do you practice it?
Well, I think what I learned from Pete on that visit was, I specifically asked him. I said, "What do you mean you didn't figure out how to coach until you got to USC? What does that mean?" And he said, "I realized that every day had to be a reflection of my values as a coach, and those values had to be practiced, and it couldn't be just." You go into any team's practice center or gym or arena locker room, you got all the slogans all over the place, right? It's not about a slogan wall. It's about what your day looks like, and what it feels like when you walk into the gym. And so I asked Pete, what does that mean for you? And he said, well, it meant finding the 4 or 5 things that were most important to me in my life. What were the values that I held most dear, and then how can I practice those things every day? And I said, well, give me an example. He said, competition. He said, I love to compete. It's my favorite thing. Whether it's playing horse with playing Monopoly with the family, whatever. I love to compete. And so every day, uh, with the Seahawks, we compete. Every drill, there's a winner and a loser. We're always competing. And that's when it started to make sense to me, because I watched them practice. I watched these one-on-one drills with each position group, and they're all fired up because they're competing, and they're going back and forth and talking trash, and it looks so much fun. But that directly related to Pete's personality. And so that day he said, and you and I talked about this that day. Pete said, find your 4 values. What are they? Write down maybe 10 things that are really important to you. Go home tonight, go back to the hotel, think about them, and distill them down to the most important 4. What are your key 4 values? And then you start thinking about how do you implement those 4 values into your everyday existence as a team. And when those things sort of collide and intersect, now that's when you can say we have a team culture. That's when you start building something that feels tangible to the players, even if they're not aware of what's in front of them. And they just feel it when they come to the gym every day.
What's really cool about that is that that list started from you, and then you had the discernment to get it down to your 4. So it's not like taking the 4 from X organization,
Right.
whether it's in business or sport. It's not like, oh, well, that's working. Let me take theirs. Because as soon as you get punched in the mouth, it's not really real, right?
That's right.
It's like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, And so, okay. So, have you talked publicly about what your 4 are?
I think I have. I know that I think one day at practice, the media actually saw the 4 values on our grease board, and so we talk about them once or twice a year in front of the group. We talk about this whole idea of what we're trying to accomplish, and so the media got to look at it, and I think I've been asked about it a couple of times, so I have shared some of that publicly.
Can you share one of them? I'm not,
Sure.
if you want to share all 4, cool. But if can you share one of them that sits at the center for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share them all, but I think the one that means the most to our team is joy, and it's something that is critical to our group in particular because I think it's reflected in the way we play. And if you watch Steph Curry, sometimes you just think he's a kid at the park, just loving basketball, and it's actually an NBA playoff game, but he's out there smiling and laughing and posing, and it's incredible to see the power that comes from the joy that Steph exhibits and that spreads throughout our team because you realize that when as it's happening, it's like it's not just we just executed a play, or we just won the battle for a loose ball, or boxed out, or did something good from a fundamental standpoint. It's just how much fun the guys are having, and when they're having fun and they're enjoying it, they're more likely to be good at it. And so joy is important in every single day of our practice, and so it's manifested in a lot of different ways. We have we basically covered the walls of our practice facility with pictures of our guys in action, smiling, celebrating championships, holding up trophies. We wanted that joy to be visible on the walls of our facility. But that's not enough. It's exhibited every day in our film sessions, which I saw with Pete in Seattle. He and his group are so good with the film sessions and editing, funny stuff, lines from movies, keep the guys laughing, keep them loose, that kind of stuff. We celebrate every birthday, whether it's a player, or a trainer, every person who's a part of our group. We try to celebrate that person's individual life and contribution to the team. And this is a daily exercise. It's a big part of kind of who we are. And I think it matters. I really think it helps bring out the best of us because it's, at its core, it's the game that we all started playing when we were kids because we loved it so much.
There's a science behind why what you're doing actually works to help people. Like stress debilitates intuition, and I should say not stress, but fear and anxiety and distress, right? Like it debilitates intuition, it decreases our ability to find flow. And so there's a real science behind the value in joy. I think people become so afraid of being joyful that they say, no, that can't, we need to be hard. Right. And so, you've taken a complete industry by storm by valuing joy. And it's not just lip service. A lot of times you'll see in organizations, the key tenets or the sloganism that runs throughout the organization, and it doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
And so that's where your alignment, like, no, I want to live with joy, guys. What do you guys think? And what that do you remember when you shared that word with your crew?
I do. It was probably a couple of months into our first season, and we were doing really well. We got off to a really hot start, but I wasn't comfortable yet kind of sharing these thoughts. I really wanted to see how they would manifest themselves and if this could feel real, and it did. And it did almost right away. And it was probably December, maybe a quarter of the way through the season. And we had a practice session basically that was dedicated to more of a film session, but dedicated to this whole idea of who we were going to be and how it was going to happen. And we talked a lot about joy. And at practice right afterwards, Steph, because he's Steph, was just running around and shrieking and laughing and saying, "Coach, I'm having joy out here. Look at me, I'm having joy."
That's when you know it's real, when you're getting clowned, huh?
That's right.
Yes.
But I will say this though, it's I don't know that this is something you can do necessarily, but when your values match those of your best player, that's a really powerful force. So that first year, Steph he was the MVP that season, and he took to that so dramatically because it was really part of who he was. But another one of the values that I set forth to the team was compassion, which is another one that might be a little bit off the beaten path, in the world of competitive sports. But Steph is one of the most compassionate people that I know, and the idea being this is a dream job, but it's not an easy one. You're competing against the best athletes in the world. You're laying it out there every day for millions of people to not only see but comment on, judge you by. And I, I think it's really important that we all show compassion for each other within the group, and that's exactly who Steph is too. So, I'm watching all this unfold, and I go, my gosh, I wanted these values to be displayed because this is who I am and this is what's important to me, and I'm the coach. But these are all the values of the MVP of the league who's on our team. Like, it couldn't have worked out any better.